నమస్కారం. డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం విద్యార్థులకు స్వాగతం. ఈ ప్రసారంలో
Dear students, MBA third year, the topic that I am going to discuss is on goal programming, which is an operational research course. And regarding this goal programming, so the organization is going to be having different kinds of situations. So decision making is very important in a critical situation where you are going to have multiple goals. Unlike in linear programming where you have only single objective function and different constraints, but here in goal programming it is a mathematical programming where you are trying to look at different kinds of multiple goals and multiple situations, and also these goals are going to be a contradicting and conflicting goals. So the objective function that is defined in linear programming is only single objective function, either it is a maximizing or maximizing the profit or minimizing the cost. But in goal programming the situation is different. The organizations or any service organization or manufacturing organization, they have not only maximizing profit or minimizing the cost, but they have different kinds of goals. So these goals are mostly, in addition to the maximization and minimization, they have different kinds of non-economic goals which are related to society contribution, social responsibility, and also to understand the human nature, and also the relationships, and also you have different kinds of quality improvement, customer satisfaction, delivery of service. So all these things are mostly the non-economic things. So how you are going to incorporate into the optimization problem like goal programming. So whenever the linear program cannot solve multiple goals, the solution to a linear programming problem is extended by the goal programming, where you are trying to address different kinds of goals as objectives. So the management is going to look at, suppose a management wants to maximize the profit, a manufacturing organization is focusing on maximizing the profit. It is not that always they have to focus on maximizing the profit. So while maximizing the profit, they have to see the availability of manpower, availability of machine, and availability of raw materials, and also the availability of the maintenance crew. So different kinds of situations you have to look at, the machine capacity and all manpower availability and scheduling of machines and capacity, and also raw material supply, everything is dependent. So these are the different other types of goals that are to be planned first. A kind of situation where you are trying to look at the environment variables are also taken into consideration. Not only the internal environment, but external environment factors also to be considered to optimize a kind of situation, to look at the society, to look at the environmental situation and find out the solution to a mathematical programming problem, that is goal programming problem. So in this goal programming problem, initially like linear programming, you have an objective function, but that objective function is only single objective function is there in linear programming, but in goal programming you have a objective function that is defined in terms of deviation variables. Suppose if you see the profit, if you fix up a profit, the management decides only that they are satisfied with 30 crores. So whether you are going to achieve above 30 crores or below 30 crores. So all the constraints of linear programming problem are going to be the objectives or goals of the goal programming problem. So each goal, or you can say goal constraint, it is a goal constraint where you are trying to look at optimize each goal and you are going to satisfy each goal. So the profit is overachievement, underachievement, or suppose the machine hours, are you going to use overtime or are you going to use idle time of machine. So overachievement and underachievement, these are the two important deviation variables are to be introduced in goal programming. So when you are trying to look at a different multiple goals, so each goal is going to have one deviation variable, and suppose 4 goals are there, so 4 deviation variables will be there. So all these deviation variables are going to be very important in incorporating in the objective function. The objective function is always a minimization function in goal programming. So in this minimization function is towards how do you minimize the deviations of these variables which are connected to the goals, different types of goals. That is what the objective function, and the constraint that is defined is in each goal, and that goal is to be, the management is going to restrict, suppose the profit is 30 crores and no overtime is claimed, and machine capacity should be 90%, capacity utilization of machine, and minimum number of products to be manufactured, only 90, type A product is 90 units, and type B product you can manufacture any units. Like that, you are defining all the constraints in terms of goals, goal constraints, and trying to achieve each one priority wise, which one you are giving more priority. Suppose if you are giving priority to profit, first you have to see that whether the goal is achieved or not. So, later sub goals, all these sub goals are to be checked up using this optimization problem, formulating the problem and try to find out a solution to the problem and see that the goals are achieved in a order sequence, and these goals are going to be either prioritized or you can say preemptive, non-preemptive. So, suppose sometimes preemptive is you can give a weightage also, suppose 70% weightage to profit and 30% weightage to other variables, depends on the experience, depends on the priority of the management or manager. So, in this goal programming, if you see this is very typical mathematical programming which is really applied to optimize a kind of situation where you are going to have environmental situation that you are going to take into consideration. That is why this theory is almost similar to Simon's theory of satisfying the techniques of modeling the modern decision making. So, ultimately how you are going to improve your decision making power using different kinds of variables, internal variables and external variables, and try to improve the situation by finding out a suitable solution. How you are going to optimize is very important, and goal programming will be giving you a better solution whenever you have multiple goals, series of goals which are prioritized, and also you are trying to incorporate the environmental or society, labor relations and such kind of variables into the solution. Actually, this goal programming is introduced by Charnes and V. Cooper in 1961, and later on this is modified or refined by the scientist Mr. S.M. Lee. It is similar to the linear programming concept, and what all the conditions that are applicable in linear programming are applicable in the goal programming also, like divisibility, determination and linearity, all these conditions are going to be satisfied, applicable in the goal programming. Suppose if you see the goal programming is going to be, sometimes weightage will be given to different goals. So, we have to give a weight 70%, 30% weight, and you can optimize the situation. So, this is a form of linear programming, and goal programming models are going to be formulated under the same limitations as you have assumptions of linear programming, and these also can be solved using a graphical technique or modified simplex method. The applications of goal programming, if you see, it is a unlimited in managerial environment. So, the applications, if you see the academic environment, you can apply this goal programming where you have different kinds of complex situations you are going to face, and how you are going to model and try to formulate in the form of goal programming, and you can find out a solutions, how you can assign faculty to classrooms, and how you are going to make use of the academic resources, how many courses you can introduce, what are the courses which are giving more revenue, which are not giving more revenue, and also how many faculty members are required, what kind of audio visual techniques are required, technology importance, all these things can be optimized. And also if you see advertising media, if you look at in advertising medias, what kind of advertising, which is the optimum advertising, so that you can minimize the cost and also see that it should be reached to the maximum people, and also you have to see the environmental effect, and also it should increase the sales and finally profit. Like that, the main goal is going to be there and sub goals are going to be defined, and you have to see if you want to optimize a situation and find out a better solution to take a decision. So, the goal programming is going to be very important, and also the other application, if you see logistics and supply chain management, you are trying to find out the transportation solutions, optimization routes, and also you are looking at in finance, capital budgeting, in the credit risk management, and also you have a computer resource allocation, how computers are going to be utilized to the maximum extent optimally. And if you see energy resource planning, so how the energy can be, suppose if you say nowadays you are getting a smart grid concept, smart cities concept. So, how you are going to look at the resources and how you are going to allocate these resources. So, using goal programming, you are trying to satisfy to the maximum goals and see that the organization is going to be successful and also running efficiently and effectively. If you see the facility layout, suppose you want to set up a retail outlet. So, how are you going to set up, on what basis you are going to set up? There are so many external factors involved. So, theoretically you can say that the retail outlet can be set up one particular location, but what are the other constraints that you are going to face and how you are going to look at all the environmental variables. All these things can be put in a goal programming problem and try to find out a realistic solution which can be implementable, which can be really giving more meeting the multiple objectives. And if you look at financial analysis, also you can have how portfolio management can be efficiently managed. And if you look at healthcare delivery planning, so how the healthcare is again an important aspect where you can have impact of societal variables, impact of people outside, and also the how delivery can be performed, how healthcare delivery can be efficient. So, it depends on not only profits, not only focusing on profits, and how do you satisfy the patient, how are you going to utilize the ICUs, how are you going to plan your surgeries, and what is operation theatre planning. So, looking at all these things, when the patient enters into a hospital, then how he is going to be comfortably coming out with a lot of satisfaction. So, lot of variables are going to influence the service delivery. So, how this delivery is good. So, if you want to improve the delivery situation, so you have to look at all the variables. And if you look at inventory management, so anyway how many units of stock can be kept, what is optimum inventory, and what kind of uncertainty that you are going to face in inventory. When the market demand fluctuates, how are you going to manage, and how are you going to manage your space, and how it is going to affect the customer satisfaction, how it is going to affect your production system, and how it is going to affect your scheduling. So, all these things are, everything is interconnected. So, the goals are going to be divided into sub goals, and these goals are to be looked at to find out a overall solution to the organizational problem. If you look at personnel, the HR department, manpower planning, and what kind of training can be required, and how performance is going to be improved, and how it is going to be helpful to the organization. So, like that you can also use a goal programming problem in a personnel department or HR department. And in the production, if you see the production department, how you are going to look at different kinds of products. Each product will be giving different capacities, and how depends on the market situation. So, what is the contribution of each product, how many products you want to manufacture, how many products you want to drop, and what is the capacity of the machine, and whether you are meeting the demand or not meeting the demand, and what would be the impact on profit, or what would be the impact on sales, and how sales force is going to work out, or what kind of budget you are going to have. All these things are you have to look at before you find out a solution to this optimization problem. So, quality control you can apply this goal program. Quality control is not a single testing a quality of a product, testing a product. So, it is going to have the input quality, and also it is going to have process capability, and it is going to have different kinds of raw material inputs, and also the technology that is involved. So, all these variables you have to look at and see that, incorporate and put it in a goal programming model, and to find out a solution, optimal solution. And also you can see the urban planning, water resources. Water resources, if you see how the water can be utilized, what are the different kinds of reservoirs, what are the levels, capacity levels, and what would be the demand that is there, and how you are going to distribute water, and how water can be conserved. All these things are, if you put it in a goal programming problem, you will find out a better solution. Business environment, normally it is unlimited application of goal programming is going to be there. And if you see the marketing, you have a media planning, what kind of media, suppose if you want to go for if you want to convey a message about the product, about the manufacturing plant, about the company, how you are going to reach the customers, and product mix decisions, what type of products you are going to manufacture. Suppose today the product is going to be giving lower contribution, but if you are trying to look at the products which are competitive, then how you are going to substitute, you want to change the technology, or you want to introduce the same production line, all these things you have to look at. In the finance, you have as we discussed in portfolio and capital budgeting and financial planning. In production area, you have aggregate production planning and scheduling. In HR you have manpower planning, and the academics, if you look at admission planning, how admission process can be efficient and what kind of students and what kind of courses you have, and each course how much, what is the intake and how many students are going to be enrolled, and what is the admission process that is going on, and how the enrollment process enrollment is increasing. All these things are going to be optimized. So, to see that how you can improve the educational system efficiency and also in terms of profit. And public systems, transportation and healthcare, all these things are you can apply. So, transportation system is going to be dependent on so many factors, how you are going to optimize this kind of situation. Suppose if you take an example, how you are going to really apply a situation, a business situation, a goal programming problem. Suppose if you look at the example, the conceptual products, suppose the example I am going to read out. So, once you look at this computer company which is going to produce CP 400 and CP 500 computers, these are the types of computers, and this company is going to be using different motherboards produced by abundant supply by the company, because there is no constraint at all, but they use same cases and disk drives. So, here there are two types, two CP 400 model is going to use 2 floppy disks drives and no zip disk, and CP 500 models are going to use 1 floppy disk drive and 1 zip disk drive. So, this is the kind of products they are going to have, and these are the inputs that are required. Here the disk drive is going to be disk drives and cases are brought from the vendors, and there are 1000 floppy disk drives and 500 zip disk drives and 600 cases available to the conceptual products on a weekly basis. These are the input resources that are available. So, this is 100, this is fixed 100, 1000 floppy disk drives, 500 zip disk drives and 600 cases available. It takes 1 hour to manufacture a CP 400 computer, and its profit is going to be $200 or $200 per computer, and it takes 1.5 hours to manufacture CP 500 type of computer, and the profit is going to be 500. So, now if you look at how the company is going to prioritize. So, there are 4 goals here. So, the priority one is, the goal one is actually they meet a state contract of 200 CP 400 machines weekly. That is the first goal the organization has to meet, and second goal is, once the goal is met, then coming to the second priority goal, that is make at least 500 total computers weekly. So, total computers, 2 types of computers, total 500, and then third priority is make at least $250,000. That means, you have to earn the profit 250,000 weekly, that is the revenue, and then you have to see that the last goal, there is no more than 400 man hours per week. So, you should not use more than 400 man hours per week. This is the situation where you are trying to identify the goals of the organization, and if you look at how you are going to define the variables in goal programming, once you understand the problem, the kind of situation, once you identify the goals, then how are you put into variables. So, variables here, the x1 is the variable, that is CP 400, number of CP 400 computers to be produced weekly, and x2 is the number of CP 500 computers to be produced weekly, and there are 2 important variables that are to be considered in goal programming. Any goal programming problem, you should have 2 variables, the deviation variables. These deviation variables are overachievement and underachievement. So, the amount, the right hand side of the goal is, goal I is deficient. So, those 4 goals are there. There are 4 variables, deviation variables, 4 variables for underachievement and 4 variables for overachievement. So, once you define this D I plus is overachievement, D I minus means underachievement. So, the functional constraints are the availability of floppy disk drives. So, 2x1 plus x2. So, it should not be more than 10,000, and the availability of disk drives, zip disk drives are going to be less than, x2 is less than or equal to 500, and the availability of cases that you can look at, x1 plus x2 for both the types of computers, that is less than 600. So, these are the constraint, resource constraints, and how you are going to, constraints can be understood as a goals. The first one is the goal 200 CP 400 type computers weekly, that is x1. So, the goal, the first goal is there are 200 CP 400 computers are to be manufactured. So, that is the first goal. So, how do you write a constraint equation is x1 plus d1 minus plus d1 plus is equal to 200. So, all the constraints should be made equivalent to equal constraint, and second constraint is 500 total computers weekly, then you have x1 plus x2 d2, the second variable is going to be deviation variables are going to be there. Like that, all the 4 goals you have 4 constraint goal constraints are there. Now, the non-negativity as usual it is going to be there, and objective function you have to minimize the profit, minimize the amount the state contract is not met. Then second priority is minimize the number of under 500 computers, then third priority is minimize the amount under 2,50,000 as the management is going to define, and minimize the man hours over 400. These are the 4 priorities that are required. So, once you formulate into a linear programming problem as goal program problem, so here you have the objective function is only single objective function which is going to reflect all kinds of deviation variables related to the goals. Then subject to constraints we have defined. Now, the solution that you are going to look at for this type of goal programming problem using a graphical method. So, here you are trying to look at to solve it graphically, first graph solution. So, this is a graph that is going to show in the goal 1, the point is going to be this is the goal 1 and this is the feasible solution, and if you look at x1 is greater than or equal to 200. So, this is going to be the line. So, the feasible solution is going to be identified first, and then once the goal 1 is over, then you are trying to look at the goal 1 as x1 is greater than or equal to 200. Once you identify the feasible solution, and then you have to go for the goal 2, that is x1 plus x2 is equal to 500. Like that, when you look at the goal 2 is graphed and you are trying to identify the feasible region, feasible solution, and once the feasible solution is that, if you satisfy the goals, second goal, then go to the now add goal 3 to the second goal, then you are trying to find out no points, beyond a point there is no solution can be found out. Ultimately, the solution is going to be the minimum value achieved is 2x1 0.2x1 plus 0.5x2, this is not met, and finally, the solution that you are going to wind up at x1 is equal to 200, x2 equal to 400. So, that your profit is going to be 240 and your underachievement of 10 is the profit. So, this is the solution that you are going to find out with the different kinds of multiple objectives. How you are going to attempt to find out a solution in a goal program is really interesting, and also is going to be applicable to the non-economic values, and also it is going to take into consideration of societal variables. Thank you.
మా కార్యక్రమాలపై మీ సూచనలు, సలహాలు, అభిప్రాయాలు మాకు తెలియజేయండి. మీ సూచనలు, సలహాలు, అభిప్రాయాలు మాకు తెలియజేయవలసిన చిరునామా: డైరెక్టర్, ఆడియో విజువల్ ప్రొడక్షన్ అండ్ రీసెర్చ్ సెంటర్, డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ, ప్రొఫెసర్ జి రామరెడ్డి మార్గ్, రోడ్ నంబర్ 46, జూబ్లీ హిల్స్, హైదరాబాద్ 500033.